Well, good evening, everybody. I'm surprised to see this many people here on such a nice night. Usually people like to stay home in nice weather. All because I suppose it is. Thanks for coming tonight. Let's see, must be August 2024 and a monthly meeting of the Minnesota Woodworkers Guild. Welcome, everyone. I'm Ed Noy. I'm president of the Guild. I'm supported by a really active and enthusiastic board of directors, some of whom are here tonight. Well, first one is Matt. Matt's our program director. Ron Austin just walked in the back. He's one of our directors. Roger Christofferson, he's our recording secretary. Who else is here tonight? Looks like, oh, there's Mike Johnson in the back. Mike is coordinating our SIG groups, which we'll talk about briefly in a little bit. And then more importantly, he's chairing the Northern Woods Exhibition Committee. Anybody else? That's about it. We got, there's 11 on the board of directors right now. And we're always looking for enthusiastic and talented folks to be part of that board of directors. So if you're interested, let me know. I'm going to turn my cell phone on mute here. I hope everybody else does. We don't like to be interrupted in the middle of things. How many people are here for the very first meeting of the Minnesota Woodworkers Guild? We got a couple in the back. Could you stand up, introduce yourselves, and tell us why you're here?
Yeah, I'm Chris Island. My dad actually invited me here. I've been to a couple of the shows that didn't very long, but I give it a shout out. Kind of an amateur, but figured I'd run the figure too.
Very good. Welcome.
I'm Lee Sager. I am Lynn's brother and his daughter, and I've grown up watching my dad make amazing things for his family, furniture and pieces. So that's what he's interested. So we'll see what we can do.
Very fine. Well, welcome, welcome. Yeah, it's a great place to talk to other folks about woodworking and then get involved with our programs. And you mentioned the Northern Woods Exhibition. That's a great place to meet folks and see how other people do stuff and get some inspiration for yourselves. As always, I like to remind everybody, you know, we have a lot of corporate and business supporters that you can find on our website. And we like to help them by giving them business, and they help our members by giving you discounts on a lot of woodworking stuff and equipment. So make sure you go to our website and take a look at who we all have. We've got 3 events coming up here in the future. We've got an expo, a fall seminar in our Northern Woods, and I'm going to let Ron Austin talk about expo because that's our first one coming up on October 12th.
Okay, the Woodworkers Expo is October 12th, less than 2 months from now. I have a few things to say. One is we're just setting up now the volunteer system. We, as always, need help to get this show set up and running it. So please consider helping us again. That'll be online shortly, and
Tomorrow.
then it'll be online
tomorrow, and we'll send out an email to remind you.
Yes, so please consider helping us. We really need your help. How is the expo going? We have 46 people registered participants signed up now, which is, we're pretty much keeping pace with last year. Of those 46, there's 18 or 19 that are new this year from last year. So if you were there last year, this year will be different, as our mode of thinking is that we want to have tool vendors, we want to have lumber suppliers, we want to have hardware suppliers, and we want to have local makers. So we want to be broad-based and to have a variety of interests and groups, etc. Some of the interesting ones that are going to be new this year, McFeely's, it's a hardware company. We have some new makers. The St. Paul Pioneer Press had this dreidel maker. He makes these hand carved dreidels for the Jewish community, and he sent me an, say again?
Dreidel.
Thank
Dreidel,
you.
yeah.
He said he wants to come to our expo, so I. Panto router, if you ever dreamed about having Panto router, they're going to be at our expo. So I encourage you to attend, but I also encourage you, if you have a small business or ever dreamed of doing that and you want to have some exposure with the public, you know, we as the guild, we offer you a table for free. So you can promote your school or your woodworking hobby, and you can it's a great way to interact with the public and see how you can do. So I will have these cards. If you want to take us up on that, I encourage you to move on it to get registered. Yes.
Mention that it's a Progress Center at the State Fair
Thank you.
and plenty of free parking.
Did you hear that? Free parking. It's at the Minnesota State Fairgrounds. Much more convenient for St. Paul people than
At the
Danbury.
Progress Center,
At
right?
the Progress Center, which is the eco building, the one with the large.
The wind turbine
wind
blades
turbine got
sticking up in
place.
the air, yeah.
Any other comments, questions? We hope to
Great.
see you there.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you.
So that is October 12th, Saturday. Put it on your calendar. Our next event coming up will be the fall seminar, our annual fall seminar. I think it's like our 24th or 5th one. I've lost count. Paul Ehrlich is chairing that. Paul's not here this evening, so I can speak to it a little bit. It's November 1st to 3rd. That's Friday evening, all day Saturday, and a half a day on Sunday. Gentleman named Chris Martin and is coming. The announcement is up on the website. There's a little biography about Chris. There's going to be a lot more information about Chris and the project he's going to be doing coming up shortly in the form of videos. The team is working on that. Registration is open. Register early because we have an early bird registration fee that expires on the 30th of September, as I recall. But go to the website and check that out. After that, the price goes up a bit. And once again, it'll be at the St. Paul College up there in their big, nice, brightly lit. It's basically a cafeteria, but it works out pretty good for us because it's got a stage and good AV equipment, good sound. And then after that will be in April, and that's Northern Woods, April 24 to 27. Mike, want to talk to it? Get a mic here from Matt.
Okay, so as Ed said, the next show is going to be April 24th through 27th. So if my math is right, it's about 8 months away. So plenty of time to get your projects going. So no excuses for not entering. We're going to be working on putting together an informational meeting geared towards first timers, so they kind of know how to apply, what to expect, what they need to bring when they come to the show. Another thing we got going on is at the expo, we've got some space dedicated. So we're going to have a small show. I've reached out to some people, got some responses back. We're going to be opening it up to a few more people. So we'll be sending out another email. So if anyone that's ever been or shown at one of the previous Northern Woods show, if you'd be willing to bring one of your pieces in to the expo, we'd appreciate that. So yeah, that's what all I got for now.
Any questions? Good. We're hoping for another outstanding show this year. It'll be our 38th, as I remember. Getting along there.
41st.
What's that? It's 41st?
I think so, yeah, I think last year was
Ooh.
the 40th.
Oh, wow. Time flies when you're having fun. One of the programs that we run is our special interest groups, these small groups of folks that are led by some not active member, but some enthusiastic member. We've got a hand tool group. We've got a luthier group, for guitars and stringed instruments. We've got a CNC group. What else we got, Mike? We got 2 design groups. That's right.
Your box making group.
Yeah, we have a box making group. Oh, yeah, and then the Windsor Chair Group. Most of those groups are full right now. I know the CNC group, though, is looking for some new members. So, and there's a notice out on our website about that. So if you're interested in these kinds of things, these are small groups, 4, 6, 8 people. They typically meet monthly at some location. The box making group, which I'm running, they've chosen to meet every month at my shop way out in Buffalo, but they all come out and we have a good time. So, keep your eyes open. Every once in a while, we'll have an announcement. We'll send out an email that a SIG group is looking for new members, and you'll get contact information to pursue that. And then lastly, we frequently get emails from people who don't know anything about the guild and know just as much about woodworking, but they have found themselves in the unfortunate position that they've just lost a loved one who has a lot of lumber and a lot of woodworking equipment, and they need to figure out how to get rid of it. So we're trying to put together a small group of members who can assist these people in that endeavor. Right now, I've got 3 people who have indicated some interest, but we need at least 3 more to make this an effective and useful group. So if you're interested in trying to help other folks figure out what to do with their heritage woodworking equipment and supplies, please contact me. And as soon as we can get enough manpower together, we'll organize an organization meeting and figure out how we can approach this. And with that, we're going to go to our door prize drawings. All right, first thing is this set of saw blades. As you can see, there are multiple sizes, all the way up to 12 inches. Oh, no, to 12.
7551.
551, last 4 numbers. There you go. You can have that ticket. We trust you. All right, I mentioned we got a bunch of stuff from Rockler. It's all in a clamp family. Here is a quick release multi-clamp, and it comes with a 10 to 25% discount ticket. Now your guild membership will give you a 10% discount at Rockler any day of the week, but they have a special going on, 10 to 25%.
560.
There you go, Ron. You can keep the ticket. More on the clamp front. We got some new product they got here. It's called the Power Jaw, right? This will probably crush your fingers or something, who knows? And a gift certificate.
550.
There you go. Use it wisely. Don't hurt yourself. And then this one, this is a spring-loaded one-handed bar clamp with a whole bunch of clamp pads and accessories, specialty jaw clamp attachments, they call it, and another discount coupon.
531.
531.
What's yours?
I don't have one.
What's mine?
Well,
That's mine.
all right, well, draw another number.
566.
David, here you go.
Thank you.
And tonight we have a consolation prize. It's a nice insulated cup with a tight bond, the Pros Advantage logo on it.
538.
538. You can put your cold or hot beverage in there and keep it that way. All right. That gets us around to our program for the night.
All right, well, while Ed's getting his stuff ready, I'll introduce Ed. because
I'm ready. We need a
Nobody
screen.
else knows Ed, who he is.
Ah, good. We got something going.
All right, so Ed's going to do a presentation on some antique, I think, chess sets that were made in Germany. Is that what I remember right?
Originally, yeah.
Originally in Germany. And as everybody knows, Ed's been our president for how many years, Ed?
Almost 8.
Almost 8 years. Works really hard as the president of this organization. And he knows a little bit about woodworking too, believe it or not. So Ed's gonna demonstrate some veneering, I think, and some inlay and all kinds of good stuff, or talk about it anyhow.
Yep, we're going to talk about it. Well, thank you, Matt, very much. Yeah, so besides being president of the guild, I'm a retired mechanical engineer who decided before he retired, he needed to keep himself busy. So I started up a custom furniture business about 10 years ago. And I get 1 or 2 or 3 commissions a year. And these projects were the result of getting a commission. And so I operate this little outfit called Maple Rock Woodworks. So I think we're going to turn some lights down. Yeah, there we go. So there's a fellow who's local who is a collector of antique chess sets. And part of chess sets, of course, is chess boards. And he saw several chess boxes online that were in the possession of various museums around the world, some of which were for sale at prices he couldn't possibly afford, and some of which were just museum pieces. This is one of the museum pieces. This is a circa 1860 ebony and ivory chess box. And it wasn't the first one I did of him, but we'll show you some more of that. So it was made, okay, so there's an international moratorium on the trade of ivory. So this box was made from synthetic ivory and Gabon ebony. And I've got samples of both up here. We can pass them around if you want, but this is the synthetic ivory. And this is real Gabon ebony, which is a lot more expensive than synthetic ivory. The synthetic is a polyester. I'm going to go ahead and pass this around. It's a little warped because I had it standing on end and it got a little bit warm. But if you look at this, it has grain in it, just like real ivory does. You know, ivory, comes from elephant's tusks and it has rings on it, just like a tree, and it ends up giving you grain like that. So we'll pass the ebony around too. What the heck? It's just a board. It just happens to be black and really hard. So and you saw that I mean, this is basically just a box like boxes that many of us have made, and you make it the same way. You make a 6-sided box and you cut it in half and you put hinges on it. Well, it's a little different, as you can see. First of all, it's trapezoidal. It's not rectilinear. It has these, there we go. It has these little abutments on the sides, and it is hinged. And we'll show you how we do that as we go through this. And then just so you have an idea, it's 22 by 22 by 5. Now the actual size of this box was determined by the desired size of the squares. Okay, so he had this box made to fit a specific chess set that he owns. So we started with the size of each square and then proportioned everything. So one of the things people always ask is, well, how do you go about that? And we'll show that. So here's a little bit of a detail here about the construction. Again, you can see how this piece appears to be applied to a basic box. We've got basically the black, which is the ebony. We got a couple of stringing here. Last month, we talked about stringing. Well, this is another method of applying stringing. This is done as a veneer, not as an inlay. And then we got some more ebony and the like. Now, this is how I went about figuring out the size of the box. at this time, I was still using SketchUp. I don't use it anymore, but it has a really nice feature. And this is just a screenshot of the SketchUp screen. You can import an image to SketchUp, and as long as the image hasn't been severely cropped, this technique works. Inside SketchUp, there's these vanishing lines, horizontals in both direction and verticals. And what you do, you move these vanishing lines around and line them up with the key features of your photograph, and it captures it. And then what you do, you say, okay, this line right here is X number of inches long, and then it scales everything to that. So all you got to do is go around with your mouse and start measuring distance between various points, and it turns out to be a really simple system. So that's how I figured out all the working dimensions once we figured out the size of the squares. And don't ask me what size they are, I can't remember. But the box is 22 by 22 by 5 when we got done. So I started by realizing that, okay, it's not a rectilinear box. So I made this really crude mock-up here, all right, to see how it was going to work, cutting compound miters and making two halves of a box and cutting it apart. And that's exactly how I made this. I made it as one piece and I cut it apart. And one thing that became patently obvious to me when I got done is, well, the two halves don't match up anymore. The top of the bottom half is bigger than the bottom of the top half. Okay, so I'm going to have to figure out how to fix that. And that really wasn't very hard. All I had to do was put another layer of veneer on the top of the bottom and the bottom of the top, and to make up for the saw kerf that I take out. Everything matches up just fine. So that's what that is. And then I decided, well, I better make a mock-up of what the real box is going to look like to scale, and with all the fancy work on it. The stringing veneers here and the checkerboard inlays here, and then figure out how to make the caps here. And I've got some of this material up here. These are both cap ends. You'll see that I've got the carcass of this thing is Baltic birch plywood, and then all the veneers are applied. And in this case, there's also veneer applied to the edges. And well, that's not correct. The way I did that, I took the board and I sliced off the end at a 45-degree angle, and basically I made a return just like a good carpenter will do with molding on the floor. So if you look at these things, you'll see there's a miter on the corner of each one of these to give you the wraparound. And I had to pay very special attention, make sure when it wrapped around, it went from white to black and black to white and didn't get all mixed up. So that's how I made the end caps here. And then the rest of it are just straight sheets. Just, well, these are all end cap ends remains when I got done. But anyway, I was satisfied that I had figured out how to make the checkerboard and all the inlay stuff. So then I went and I spent some money on some real expensive material. So there's my prototype that I had made up. This is a big stick of a gaboon ebony, which I bought from Bell Forest Products. And here is a block of, or I guess you could call it a bar of synthetic ivory. And here's a big sheet of synthetic ivory, and I'll show you why I had two different sizes. And then these are all the Baltic birch pieces that make up the box. These are going to be the sides, the tops and the bottoms. And you'll see how that works out here as we go through. All right, so to make the stringing, here's a piece of stringing. I'll pass that around too. I started out on the table saw. Because of the synthetic ivory here being plastic, a regular saw blade gets kind of rough on it, really tears it up. So I discovered that you can get a triple chip tooth blade made for aluminum and non-ferrous materials that cuts it really clean. And in this case, I wanted to conserve as much of this expensive material as possible. So I just got a 7¼ inch handsaw blade. So it's really thin, so I don't lose much kerf. And of course, I didn't have I needed to make sure I had a zero clearance insert on my table saw, but I didn't have one that thin. So I just took a piece of 1/8 inch MDF, used double-sided tape, taped it to the top of the table saw, ran the blade up through it, and now I've got a zero clearance insert for a blade these are only about a 1/16 of an inch wide. Okay, so then I ran my 1/4 inch thick milled ebony through it to get it to size. And I did the same thing here with my 1/4 inch. Well, at this point, it wasn't 1/4 inch, but the ivory ran that through. So I had equal widths of material.
Did you resaw the ebony?
I did, yeah,
How did that go?
just fine.
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, the question was, did I resaw the ebony? You saw here that I had a really big chunk of it. And yeah, it resaws just fine. It's pretty hard. It's probably as hard as oak. It's a lot finer grain. And you do have to worry about the dust. The dust gets a little bit kind of raunchy. It's toxic, like a lot of exotic woods. But that wasn't too much of a problem. I did the same thing here with the, no, I did, I resawed this thick stuff, but to make different parts. I'll show you that in a minute. So now I've got these strips of ebony and. Yeah, the question is, how did I mill the thin strips? Yes, I used a drum sander. Yeah, I sawed them on the bandsaw and then ran them through the drum sander to thickness. So I've got these strips. They're, I don't know, they're about 1.5 inches wide, and they're all 1/8 of an inch thick, which is, just like that sample I'm sending around. And I bonded them, got my ebony back. So all those strips were as thick as this ebony. That's just a leftover piece from it. So I bonded them all in pairs like this. Of course, this has got a white on the bottom. That's got a black on the bottom. And I had to use epoxy because I'm bonding this polyester material. Would just slide off of it when it dried. So I had to use some epoxy. I just used some, with some System 3 slow cure stuff, 24-hour cure. I tried the 5-minute cure stuff, but it was too thick. It didn't give me good glue lines, and this just worked better. So I glued those together, and then I took them and I cut them in very fine. So you can see on my bandsaw here, I've got it set for about 1/8 an inch, and just kept running them through until I got all these 1/8 inch strips. And there's a couple of them sitting here. Glued all those together and ended up with all this inlay material. Well, I didn't use it as inlay, I used it as veneer. Okay, now this is the first steps in building the checkerboard pieces. Again, now these all had to be milled to precisely 1/4 inch, each one of them, because we start ending up with the stacking errors if you're off a little bit. So I glued this all up together, set up a little cross-cut sled here with a 1/4 inch spacer, and I had to, you can see here it's adjustable with some clamps. Had to make a few slices to make sure that the slices that came off were exactly the same as the thickness of the bands I used. So I run them through table saw, again, using this really fine curved non-ferrous, had to be glued together. Big stacks of glue job, all glued together. And then here I'm again running it through the bandsaw, doing a rough cut. And to Oz's point, after I made these cuts, I ran through my drum sander to thickness. So all my veneer parts are the same thickness. I think I use a 1/16 of an inch. So here you can see all these strips of banding material. And I was really, really pleased that once I got it down to this thickness, all these parts still stuck together edge to edge. I only had a couple that had some weak bonds. And that was okay, because if they broke, I just use them for one of the short sections instead of one of the long ones. So a lot of work up to this point, just making pieces to go start gluing on to a box. So the next step here was, so now I had all these nice checkerboard pieces and I had all these banding. Now I had to glue them together so I could make some sides. And I just used a veneering technique. You know, you stack them all together and tape them. You don't glue them together edge to edge at this point. You just tape them all together. And this is what they are. These are all taped together, but sitting so you can see the show side. And the only thing that bonds them together is when you bond this to the substrate material, which is the box. That holds everything together. And you can see here, I got all the components laid out here. The checkerboard stripes, the edge bandings, and the broad bands of the ebony that go up top, bottom, and center. So I just made a lot of boards. These boards were made to go around the sides of the box, and these boards here were for the caps that go on the corners. Then I moved on to the checkerboard itself. Very, very common checkerboard process. Again, make alternating pieces, stack them all together. Here I taped them all up. I did glue these because what I had to do next was start slicing them like this. And then you just alternate them and then tape them up together. I went and I taped more of the banding on the outside. And then I glued that whole thing down to the top of the box once the box was built. And I didn't have any photographs of actually building the box, but it looked just like this. Well, I guess it didn't look, it looked just like that after I finished, right? So I built the box, didn't have the end caps on it at the time, built the box, assembled these end caps, just glued them on. There's no joinery involved. It's just a face-to-face joint here. And then I cut the box in half carefully. And as you can see here, there's a couple of thin layers of veneer, a couple of 16th inch layers, one on the top and one on the bottom. And that made up that saw curve that I took out. Got a question?
When you were gluing the ebony and the ivory to the wood box, were you able to use wood glue then?
No.
No, it was epoxy.
The question was, yeah, the question was, when I glued all the veneers to the wood box, was I able to use wood glue? And the answer is no, because I couldn't get any bond between the ivory pieces. That all had to be epoxy. And I was trying to recall when I put this, I built these boxes, this was in 20. I couldn't recall how I held the veneer in place while the glue set up. I'm pretty sure I did not put this in a vacuum bag because of its weird shape. I probably used cauls and clamps and just had to wait for the glue to set up.
Another question, when you ran these through the belt sander, what grit did you take it down to?
Question is, when I belt sanded these things to thickness, what grit did I use? 150. Yeah, that was plenty, because I knew when I got finished, well, after I assembled this whole thing, then I went over it with some 220 and some 400 to get it nice and smooth and glossy. Because the finish on this whole box is just wax. There's no other finish on it at all.
When you sand it, were you concerned that the ebony might, one material would take off, because it's harder, so it'd be kind of uneven?
Yeah, the question was when I tried to sand this assembly, was I worried about one of the softer material, which is certainly the ivory, coming off at a faster rate than the harder ebony. I didn't have any issue with that. I didn't go at it aggressively, so I took my time, but I did not have any issue with that. I also didn't have any issue with cross-contamination of the ivory getting into the ebony. just, or vice versa. I mean, you can't, the ivory wasn't going to accept anything. It has no pores. But I didn't have any problem going the other way. I'm going to talk about another box later that I did have that problem with. Charlie?
From the photo, is it just the photo or the squares on the top? Ivory was a different color on the side.
Yeah, it's just the lighting, you know, this is the non-professional Noy photograph. Yeah, no, it was all exactly the same. Do I have another shot of it? Yeah, see here? It's a lot better. And you can just see the details here, you know, miter joints here. This is where I took this board and I cut it at a 45-degree angle and then wrapped the piece around and glued it. I used wood glue on that corner because all that was just Baltic birch plywood against one another. And then when I applied this cap to this base side at this interface here, I just used epoxy. And question is, did I have any problem with chipping of the veneer? No, because I used that triple chip tooth blade and it just really did a nice job.
How about with the bandsaw? The bandsaw looked kind of rough.
Yeah, the question is, did the bandsaw roughen up stuff? Yeah, it did. I was probably using a 6-tooth blade and it roughed it up a bit. That's why I had to run it through the drum sander, but I didn't have any excessive chipping. The synthetic ivory actually machines pretty well.
Did you use the bandsaw just because it was a thinner curve? Or why didn't you use the table saw for everything instead?
Yeah, did I use the bandsaw because it was a thinner curve? Yes. Yeah, even that nice blade I had was a lot thicker than the band. It was twice as thick as the bandsaw.
You know which manufacturer you got the table saw blade?
Yeah, it's a, it was it was the red one you buy at Home Depot. No, it wasn't. Yeah, it was a Diablo, a Diablo. A 7 1/4, it's called a triple chip tooth blade. Yeah, nothing special.
How thick did you resaw it first on the bandsaw? And how many times did you have to run it through the sand?
Oh, I had to run it through the sander maybe twice. So I resawed it pretty much to thickness.
So you didn't really take much off.
No, just enough to get rid of the bandsaw marks.
So by my count, just off the top of my head, there are 20 corners where that checkerboard has to come together.
Yeah,
Were you actually able to get all of those to, you know, the black and the white, the size of the squares?
yeah.
How did you figure that out?
You're talking about this? The corners?
No, I'm talking matching granite going around.
Oh.
the perimeter of the box.
Oh, it just, you know, being careful.
Are you a bit of a perfectionist, Dad?
No, not really. I tried to get the real boxes here tonight, but the owner and I crossed paths too many times. This was at the 2021 Northern Wood Show, and if you looked at it carefully, you would have seen that on 2 of these edges, they didn't match. But nobody, everybody gets so confused by all those squares, they don't look that close. Yeah, it just took a lot of patience, Charlie, that's all. Any more questions on this one?
They got one from, I'll just get it, maybe you repeat it. They said you no longer use SketchUp. What program do you use?
I'm using Fusion 360 now. It doesn't have that nice feature on it, but I haven't had that problem. Another question?
Seems like with the way those corners are wider at the base and narrower at the top, you have a compound miter to be able to return it.
Yep.
So how'd you sneak up on that cut for that miter to return the face? Does it make sense?
Yeah, I didn't have to sneak up on it. I just cut it on the line.
Oh, could you repeat the question?
Oh, the question was, how did I, these miters here are a compound angle, and that's correct. So is this one here. And he wanted to know, how did I get these things to end up at the edges of squares? And just carefully, Of course, I lose the kerf width. So on the piece that turns around, I actually have to make a second cut on it to remove material so I can match up the pattern again. Yeah.
And how'd you do that? Remove just a fine amount of material? Did you make a?
Well, I had to
saw
remove like, I used my that same saw setup I had before. Well, you have to remove a 1/4 inch plus, because you have to remove 1 square plus the leftover from this one. So, you're taking off 5/16 of an inch. It's not, it wasn't that difficult.
But the return was longer. And then you just cut it.
And then cut it back. Yeah. The return that I cut off here was longer than a 1/4 inch. And I cut it back until I get the pattern to match going around the corner. I guess, does this one show that? No, I guess I don't have any photograph that really shows how the match goes around the corner. And this was the finished box. This box didn't have anything special on the whoops. Come on, Ed. Didn't have anything special on the inside. It's just finished off with billiard cloth.
Is that felt or block?
It's billiard cloth. Yeah, which is a heavy felt. Yeah. It's always fun putting felt on and then trying to get an edge here that looks good. So basically you have to wrap it around. In this case, I use acid-free artboard and wrap it around the edge and put it on there. So you got a nice looking edge. It's not just the edge of frayed fabric.
So he didn't want slots for putting the chess pieces in there?
On this one, he did not ask for anything special on the inside. Yeah. Different on the next box. Any further questions on this one? There's, sure. Yeah, so I made up a lot of these panels with the miters on them because I had to do a lot of fuss and cutting and pasting and getting stuff to work there. We got that panel. If anybody wants to look at big checkerboards.
So this all started from just a picture that he sent you?
Yep, that photograph I showed you.
So Ed, when you got the commission, you must have sat down and figured out what you were in charging, which means you kind of calculated some amount of time. How accurate were you?
I didn't do any of that. I looked at this box and I looked at other boxes I've made. I said, this is going to be a fun project to figure out. If I figure out how many hours it might take me, he probably won't take the commission. So I gave him a price that I can make money on as long as I didn't calculate my hourly rate. Hourly rate on this one was probably sub 10 cents. Yeah, I didn't keep track of my hours on this one at all. No, I typically do keep track of hours when I build pieces, but not this one, because there was so much real-time problem solving going on. Yeah.
Did you build it over a month of time?
This was during the pandemic. And I think I started it in like October and finished it in it must have been May. Of course, I didn't work on it 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. I'd work on it until I got stuck and then I'd go figure out a solution. It actually took a little bit of time just to find the doggone materials. Yeah.
What kind of hinge did you put on?
The question is, what kind of hinge? It's nothing special. They're just butt hinges. They're brass, and I did antique them so they didn't stick out like a sore thumb. Yeah. They're probably Hortons because I buy Hortons a lot. All right, we're going to move on to another one. This one here, as you might guess, was another really interesting project. Again, it's a box. It's square, and you put it together and you cut it in half and you're done. It's a replica of a 1760 circa box that's probably made in southern Germany. The description that came with it on the museum site where he found this wasn't very specific. And the box was reproduced from photographs of the original. I had more than one photograph on this box, and I'll show you a couple of those. The first box I showed you, I had that one photograph. That was it. These game boxes are really rare, and I made this for this collector. I had to do, I did a lot distressing this piece and adding age to the veneers and the finish to make it as authentic looking as possible. Of course, every surface inside and out is veneered, because this one does have a fancier interior than just the billiard cloth. The only solid pieces on the box that are visible are these pieces here. The trim pieces on the top and the bottom. Every other surface that you see inside and out is veneered. And I had to make my own tools and a few things, and I'll go through that. So again, it's built on a laminated Baltic birch core. Uses African mahogany, that's the solid pieces. Uses rosewood and Brazilian satinwood and mahogany veneers. This one is finished with shellac and polyurethane varnish and wax. So it's a little smaller than the other box. This is only 19 by 19 because it had smaller squares. Same thing as the other one. It had to be built to fit the chess set that he wanted to put on it.
Ed, was that for the same guy?
Same client, yeah. I've built four boxes for him. These are the two most interesting. The other two, one of them I didn't even like, but I made it. So just looking at this kind of, okay, as first impression, all right, so it's definitely not square. We got all this fancy work here on the corners. We got what's going to have to be solid wood because it's got this molded edge that goes all the way around on top and bottom. But clearly this is veneered because you can see the grain direction changes here. And you're not going to be sticking two pieces of solid wood together and have a seam here because there isn't a seam there on the molding. It's also got a bead detail going around the interior here on the top. The bottom is the same way. We got several different woods here. We got what we decided was going to be mahogany. I'm not exactly sure that's what this wood is, but of the materials that I was familiar with and had available to me, mahogany had the best grain type and color. This we made up of rosewood because that's what I think it is. And in here, there's a thin accent of what we chose was satinwood. Same thing on the top. Top is rosewood and satinwood. And then he wanted to try to find a blacksmith that could make this latch. And we tried for a while, but couldn't find anybody who was interested. So we gave up and we came up with a different kind of latch. So there's that latch. Oh, here you can see, you can get a really good view here of this nice continuous molded solid mahogany here and how the satinwood, now you can see here the satinwood isn't just satinwood, it also has some ebony in it. So it's a black stripe and then a quote yellow stripe.
The veneers, were they commercial veneers or?
Question is, were the veneers commercial? Yes, in this case, I used all commercial veneers. Here's another view that I had available of the box, and I was grateful to have this because it gave me a really good detail about what these funky looking corners had to look like. And again, here you can see the ebony and the satinwood very clearly. You can also see that this box had some really heavy duty brass hinges on it. This turned out to be quite a challenge too, and because of the geometry of the box. So I designed this box in SketchUp. You can see here, this is the latch we ended up with. The next photograph gives you a better view of how the thing was put together. So there's these are, we'll call them solid. These are laminated Baltic birch plywood, four slabs for the sides, and then specially turned corner pieces. All of this then was assembled together, and then the top and the bottom were inset in that to fit. And here you can see the hinges we ended up with. Because of these protrusions here, you can't just use a regular butt hinge because the hinge on a butt hinge would end up in there. So I managed to find these. They're called barrister hinges. And they're kinds of hinges that are used in Parliament on the big bookcases they have that hold all the barristers' legal journals. And there's a couple of companies that actually make these things. So I was able to find those and use those. So, and they provide all the clearance you need to get these little points separated when you open this box.
So when you close it, it looks like they'll protrude out the back.
They do. When you close the box, they do protrude out the back. You can see, from here to there. But that's just one of those geometry things that has to be that way. All right, so here's the beginning of the project. These are all the pieces of Baltic birch that all the strips that I had to cut out for sides and all the fancy pieces that are going on. And I laminated them all here. I used a vacuum bag to get them all together. At least this time I could just use wood glue, nothing, no special epoxies or anything. Here, which is 4 sides. Of course, I built this like a regular box. It's full height, and then when the box was done, it was cut apart in the middle. You can see and so I had to laminate all these together because you can't buy Baltic birch like that. That's what the previous photo was about. These pieces on the end here, those form part of that protrusion once a radius is cut in this corner here. And I think I've got it here. So those pieces I just showed you are these things, but I have not yet cut in this radius here. So I had a little bit of, I had to MacGyver this one. So this is the jig I set up to cut those. You can see buried in here under all these different kind of clamps is that piece. And right in here there's a Forstner bit that's going down and creating that radius there. All right, so now we got that. Now we got these pieces cut to shape. Now we need to cut these pieces here. Well, clearly this is a piece you'd put in a lathe. I mean, it's a cylinder, so why not? Well, yeah, so that's what I did. I made a stack, made an octagon to start with. But what you see here, you see glue lines, right? So this is 4 different strips of Baltic birch glued together with paper in between. You can use a brown paper shopping bag. I happen to have a roll of construction rosin paper in this shop, and that's what I put in there. The idea being that, okay, once you turn this, you can separate this assembly easily on these glue lines, and that's just what I did. And there you go. So you can see here, it got turned in a lathe, and I just used a chisel, popped this apart, and then cleaned off these surfaces with a card scraper. And here you can see, this is a rough assembly of all these pieces. Those funky pieces that I made when I cut through with the Forstner bit here. I got these quarter cylinders here, and you can see, it looks like they don't match up, but they do. It's just the way I stacked them up here for the photograph.
Just regular glue, woodworker's glue to glue the 4 pieces together?
Did I use just woodworker's glue to glue the 4 pieces together? You're talking about over here, whoop, over, whoop. Come on, go backwards, Ed. You're talking about here? Yeah, just yellow glue. Yeah.
It's not gonna go through the bag enough that it's really hard to get a hard pull out. That bag will separate. Like you said, a grocery bag.
Yeah, you could use, well, okay, I use rosin paper here. You could use a grocery bag too. The glue permeates the bag on both on the paper and the wood. Just glue it together. But when you split it apart, it's the fibers in the bag that just give up.
Okay.
Then you just have to scrape this off so that you've got a good glue surface for the assembly here. Now I assembled this whole thing with splines. Again, they're plywood splines. And you can see they're all four corners are double spline. And, oh, I also had to cut this corner notch in those round pieces after I had made them. I didn't show that part. Guess we should back up. Because see, all these have to have a corner cut out of them so you can put the top on it. But that's just, I was just running the pieces through the table saw and cutting a notch in them. And here it is. It's all, I use these nice band clamps just to pull this whole thing together. Of course, the top and the bottom, I spline them in as well. And again, it's plywood, so I don't have to worry about expansion and contraction due to humidity. And I just had to make sure I cut the top and the bottom so it fit relatively tight. Because it's all covered with veneer, I could go around and fill any voids like this little one here, just with wood putty, just so the veneer didn't, just so the hole didn't telegraph through the veneer that was going to go on it later. Okay, now we got this core built. Now it's time to start these trim pieces on the top and the bottom. And you can see here pretty much how I did this. There's a strip for each side, and then there's a special little cap that goes on each corner. I made myself a template. Really exotic, okay, but that's the shape, and I use this for as a router template. So I took my piece of mahogany, used double stick tape, put my template on it here. Also, not only did I use this as a router template, but a bandsaw template. I used Michael Fortune's technique here. I put this block of wood on. You can see right here, there's a little relief cut in that block for the bandsaw blade. And then my part runs up against it. That way I had 8 of these to cut. And rather than stand there and be really careful not to cross that line, I just went ahead and template cut it. And every one of them came out just exactly right. Left a 1/16 of an inch of the material. So then I just put that on a router table next. And whoop, not quite, but put that on a router table and, you know, flush trim the whole thing. Now I had to put in that edge profile that I had showed you much earlier. It started out pretty simple. I had this little multi-profile or multi-beading bit that was just the right size, so I could you know, run that on the template that I built and cut at least this bottom part of the bead. But there's another 1/16 inch bead up here for which I didn't have any router bit and couldn't find one. So I did what every good woodworker does, and I improvised. I made myself a scratch stock. And you can see here, I just took an old piece of saw blade and a couple of files and made myself the profile I needed and stuck it in a shop main handle and then scratched that whole profile into all those pieces. And you can see here what they look like when they got done. And I was pretty proud of those when I got them finished. But now I needed the corner pieces. So again, I just made myself a nice little router jig, bandsawed these out rough, ran them on, flush cut them to the template, and then used that same little beading bit, put that first bead in, and then with that scratch stock, I went and put in the bottom bead as well. So I ended up with these 8 corner pieces. And those all got assembled in the top and bottom frames. Now here, I did not use any fancy joinery. These are just butt joints. That's because this whole assembly was going to get glued down to the top, and it wasn't any way that these joints were ever going to loosen up. Okay, well, here it is. These are the actual hinges I used, and it was fun cutting these mortises in, as you might imagine. But they fit, and you can see here, the hinges are all numbered, each plate, because I discovered they were all different. I discovered that the hard way, but they were all different, so they all went in one particular location. And here you can see those spline joints at all the corners. that show up after, I cut the box in half. And then here's just a shot of the veneers I use. I got this really nice mahogany veneer, this rosewood and this satin wood, all from Certainly Wood up on the East Coast. Really good outfit to work with. Whoop. Okay. Now, I mentioned to you I had to do a lot to make this finish look kind of like the other box did. I used yellow shellac and blonde shellac. And as you'll see later, this is a sample board I did, and I sat down with my client, we went over it, and he decided this didn't look quite right. So I made a couple other samples. I didn't have a photograph of them, but you'll see in a little bit what I had to do when I actually finished the box. Okay, so these are the side panels. Again, standard veneering techniques. You cut all the strips. How do you get veneer cut this thin? When I made this box, I purchased those strips. But then the next box I made, I cut them myself. I discovered it was really easy on the table saw. It's not a big deal. But anyway, I purchased those strips. So you just put them together with veneer tape on the back side. Make yourself some nice panels. I had pointed out much earlier that the trim boards on the top had these veneer strips where the grain was diagonal and met in the middle. So I put those together. This is, of course, the checkerboard top. And then this box has a backgammon board on the inside. So you can see here, those are the backgammon veneers all cut and laid up, ready to be installed. All right, now, at this point, how many of you have ever used this stuff here? Iron-on edge banding. You can make this yourself. And that's what I ended up doing. Okay, how are you gonna get, how many days are you gonna spend making a clamping, making a clamping call that you could clamp this on and let the glue dry? So what I did, I used Type-On number 2. It works the best. All the Type-On glues are thermoplastics, but Type-On 2 is the best for this. It's got a melting point of about 140 Fahrenheit. So what you do, you mix up the glue with about 30% water. It kind of depends on how old the glue is. If the glue is really old, you're going to have to add 50% water, but fresh glue, you can do about 30%. It really thins it down a lot. And what you do, you just paint it on your surface, both the substrate and the veneer, and you dry it. And you can see here I was in a hurry, so I used my hot air gun, and we get that stuff dry in a couple minutes. You put on 3 or 4 coats, and you end up building up a thermoplastic glue layer on both of your parts. And then you take yourself a little hobby iron like this, and you literally iron it on. And that's exactly how I put all these pieces on. Cut them to length, wrap them around there, just keep heating them up until they stick. And it worked really great. Time consuming, but it works really fine.
So you left the tape on there when you glued it on, or?
Okay, the question is, I left the tape on there when I glued it on? No, the tape was on. No, okay, that's a good question. How did I do that? Oh, no, I remember now. I edge glued all these veneers. Individually, and then removed the tape, from the assembly, and then ironed it on that way. Yeah, that was a good question, though. What else? So anyway, I just kept working around the box that way. This is the top. Okay, so I got all this together. We got the rosewood and the satin wood. And I could scrape it flat. When you put this stuff together, it's not all perfectly smooth. So I scraped it flat. And when I was making those sample panels, I went and sanded it. And that's what I discovered. Oh yeah, there's a problem. The rosewood swarf would get into satinwood pores and stay there. I solved that by putting a coat of shellac on it first. After I scraped it flat, I put shellac on it, and then when I sanded it, I didn't have that contamination problem. And then here's the whole box put together. You can see I just took these trim pieces, put them on the top. I had to make some special little moldings to set in here on the interior. We got the backgammon board on the interior. Now this is the finishing step that I had to add. As you can see, right here is a bowl of orange dye. And I had to put orange dye on everything before I went and start putting shellac on it, because that was the color correction that the client required to make the box the right tone. It's a technique I had used before. I made a piece of furniture for the house, tried to match up some other furniture that I had, and I realized, oh yeah, it's not orangey enough. So I put orange dye as an undercoat and put the stains on top of it, and everything comes out right. I don't claim to be any sort of a finishing expert. I just stumbled across this and it ain't worked.
Did you have any difficulty because you had already shellac checkerboard before you sanded it? Did you sand it through the shellac and then dye it?
Question was, did I have any problem having shellacked this to sand it? Did I have any trouble with the dye penetrating it? No. I used transient dye, so there's no it's not a stain, and it goes. It works with the shellac very well. Question was, did I use alcohol or water? I usually use water, and that's what I did in this case. I do the same thing with maple. Matter of fact, I just finished a couple of boxes at home made out of maple, and of course, it just looks too stark and white. So I used a dark maple, an antique maple dye, but I put 2 coats of shellac on first, and to keep it from blotching. And it works just fine. Now, granted, if you put way too much shellac on, you're not going to be able to dye it, but this worked just fine.
Where's your source for the dye?
Source for the dye, well, Woodcraft. I don't know if Rockler sells it. It's Trans Tint is the brand that I used. You can get it at Homestead Finishes. He's the guy who actually has it manufactured and distributes it.
So it's a water-based product.
Well, yeah, no, it's a powder. And you either mix it with water or alcohol. And you mix it at whatever strength you want to change its saturation. But there's a recommended, I think it's like, it's on the bottle. They come in little bottles. It's not real cheap, but it really works nice because it will not obscure the grain at all, like stain will. Anything else? All right. So then, I got it all shellacked up, and then needed to make it look antique, so I waxed it, and then I went and got myself some rotten stone. Anybody ever used rotten stone before? You know, way before they had 3000 grit sandpaper, they used rotten stone, and you can still buy it at Woodcraft. So anyway, I waxed it up real good and put rotten stone and rubbed it in all the corners, and then wiped it all off. And this is the finished product. And as you can see, there's a little bit of quote dirt in all the crevices and stuff. And this is a very exotic latch that I bought on Alibaba. I had to buy 20 of them in a bag. But this is a latch that they like. So if anybody needs a latch like this, I have 19. And then that's just another angle of it. And then there's one that shows it, it's open with the backgammon stuff on the inside.
Did you play a game of chess with them then?
I did not. No, I wouldn't do that. I'm not a very good chess player. I don't know if he is or not. I wasn't going to embarrass myself. The question was, did I play a game of chess with the client? No. We did meet for a cup of coffee. And I think that's everything. Yep. So thanks for your time.